to Dr. M Health Corner Talk Show. I am Dr. Unati, your host. I am back, and I must say it was such a wonderful break. We always work hard, and of course, with the COVID-19, it hasn't been easy for all of us. And I just thought, to reconnect and rejuvenate, it's important for me to take time off. So I'm so happy to be back and welcome. I see people are coming on. I am so super excited actually about today's show. Today, I am bringing to you Dr. Nazanin Moali. She is a clinical psychologist and a certified sex therapist. Today, our topic, as you can see, it's one of my favorite topics because I see this every day in my practice. And of course, this is her work. Every day, she sees more than one me. I could probably see one or two clients. And today, we're going to take a deep dive on this topic. Dr. Naz, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited about our conversation.
I am super excited. My people are right here. And you know what, Dr. Naz, the last time I brought a colleague, we talked about it from a medical perspective. People come to our practice, they complain about sex struggles and intimacy. And interestingly, people always think it's only women. And men come, and I actually now focus on men's coaching. They come vulnerably and share their thoughts and their struggles. So today, I really want you to bring your gems here. Dr. Naz, tell me, people when they say they're struggling with sex and intimacy, what is it that when they see you in your practice really mean?
Could mean different things for different people. I think one of the challenges that many people have is they think like sex needs to be certain way. And if they don't kind of like do a certain behavior in a certain order, or they don't like they like something outside vanilla, there's something wrong with them. So I have clients that coming in and saying that there's something wrong with me. I have this fantasy, this desire. And in reality, it's just like our sexuality can be very different and could be healthy. So I think that's a worry that many people have. But I see many couples in my practice that are struggling with desire discrepancy. One partner wants sex more than the other partner, or there are perhaps some challenges. There was this statistic that showed that couples in a long-term relationship, between 30%, I think it was for men, and 25% for general population women, that at some point they struggle with some kind of a sexual dysfunction in the relationship. That's completely normal and expected. So I think what's important for people to get help and work on it as a team. So I see a lot of that.
I know, right? And you know what? There's something you mentioned, because people always think that it's the actual act that is a problem. And you mentioned something beautiful about sometimes it starts with a conversation. What triggers are there in the conversations you have, or probably any issues you have between each other? Because that's part of foreplay. Can you take us through that? Because a lot of times we think that it's when you get to bed and things happen. And sometimes it's just the conversations that was not even started.
Absolutely. When people are struggling, could be number of different things with sex and intimacy in the relationship. Part of it could be relational issues. At times I get people in my practice that they're saying that, our sex life is not good, but it's not good because the relationship is struggling. Perhaps there are some issues with trust or previous betrayal or bickering. Sometimes people don't know how much this kind of back and forth they have with their partner is impacting the relationship. And if you don't like the person outside the bedroom, it's hard to desire them inside the bedroom. So the relationship piece could be part of it. Part of it could be our own mental health challenges. When we have depression, anxiety, trauma, or stress, even that can impact our desire, our sexual functioning, and it shows up in our relationship. And the other piece of it could be things from our kind of history, like family history, things that was passed from one generation to another generation, wrong messages around sex, wrong expectation from thinking about what it needs to be. And I think that can be also another challenge that can impact people.
You know what? Let's talk about that part, the last piece, because there's a conditioning we come up with. We are raised, and also there's also this element of when you ask for what you deserve, it's like you're
Mhm.
a bad girl. I'll talk about girls specifically. They feel scared to share their thoughts and how they want to be caressed, and basically how they want to be, basically the expectation they have from their partner. There's also this slut mentality that if
Mhm.
you ask for what you want, it's like perceived as a slut, and that
Mhm.
cultural component. Like, how do people break through that, really?
Well, I think it starts with recognition. That first of all, I always tell my client, think about who are your sex role models, because in all culture, and where I grew up in Iran, we don't get proper sex education. Like even with our parents, we don't see what
Yes.
the intimate relationship look like, and then what happens is oftentimes people think that what sex looks like is what they see in porn and different movies, like what it's supposed to look like, which is not accurate. And then we have this wrong template in our mind, and then we're entering an adult relationship without having any template, and then we're having unrealistic expectation of ourselves and from our partner. What happens that I see a lot, that couples struggle with this love and lost dichotomy, that they think that there's like when they love someone, it's hard to objectify them and want them and desire them, and that can be a challenge. And I have couples that come into me and they say, I love my partner, but it's just hard to want them and desire them. And I think that's a challenge that many people have, and partly can come from that mentality that you mentioned, that good girls are not sexual. If you think
Yes.
about sex, you're shallow, there's something wrong with you. Or if your partner likes you, he or she or they need to know what you like. I hear that a lot, that thinking about if
Yes.
they care about me, they would know what I want, which is an unrealistic expectation. Our desire changes, our sexuality changes, and we don't know what we don't know. So I think it's important to
Yes.
have open
Yes.
communication with our partner.
Yes, I love the last part because, like you said, a lot of times, especially women, they would expect their men to know their sports, and also there's also that stigma attached and the shame. Women, they
Mhm.
tend not to explore their bodies, and they expect their partner to know exactly which sports to really touch. So
Mhm.
now let's go back. I would like us to take a deep dive again on the part where now there's desire and fantasies. Let's talk on
Mhm.
that because I
Mhm.
really would like you to take a deep dive on that, because again, there's fantasies, there's also these desires. Men who come to me tell me that I'm scared, doc, to share this with my partner, with my spouse, because she would think that I'm sleeping around. Where did you
Mhm.
get that, and why are you, like, can you take us through that and see why is it men also feel shameful to share these desires and fantasies with their partners?
Mhm. Well, when it comes to sexuality, there's two components to arousal, like psychological arousal and physiological arousal. And part of our psychological arousal comes from our fantasy. It's very normal and healthy for people to have sexual fantasies. It doesn't mean that they're bad people or they're not good partners. That's how our brain works. Our brain continuously makes these stories, like the same way that you're fantasizing about winning a lottery, your brain also
Yes.
creates sexual fantasies. And at times that fuels our creativity and our desire. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And sometimes people get kind of, they're cautious when they think about their own fantasies, because sometimes our fantasies are different than what we want. And our fantasies
Yes.
serve a specific purpose of neutralizing the feeling of guilt at time. So that there's like so many different layers to it. But I think it's important to, if it's important for you to talk about it with your partner, to bring it up. You don't need to talk about it, but I know many couples, they find it very exciting when they share their fantasies with the partner. You brought up such a great point that at times our partner might not be open to hear. But one
Yes.
one thing that I've seen is sometimes that comes from the place of fear. Our partner thinks
Yes.
that if I hear my partner, like them, or hey, uh like I'm agreeing that I'll do this. But most times people just want to talk about it. It's kind of like, even I have clients that they talk about their fantasies during their foreplay, and that can make things very exciting. So I think it's important to think about that. If we are hearing our partner, there's nothing that we're agreeing on. We're just like listening to them. And I think one thing that's really important when we hear our partner when they're sharing their fantasies is just being very curious about them and their sexual self. And if you're not into it, please don't kind of like go to attack or say things like you know I don't want
Yes.
it. Like one of the researcher I love, she says don't yuck someone else's yum. So I think it's
Right.
important to promote that openness. So I think that's something that I tell people. But I think definitely leaning to your own sexual fantasies, whether you're sharing it with your partner, can only enrich your sexuality and eroticism.
I love it. I love it. And also, while we're still there, I've seen also women specifically becoming a little offended when a man starts wanting to share all these fantasies,
Mhm.
and they come up with all the stories around. Again, it goes back to our stories that we know, like the model, the pattern, or the templates we know
Mhm.
about sexual acts, where women would say, "Then it means I'm not attractive if you
Mhm.
suddenly want to use porn." I would like you to talk about that. What's the role of
Mhm.
that? Because some people, they are very averse to it, some are open to it, and I've seen you actually heard you in one of your podcasts talking about
Mhm.
how they can also be danger in that and
Mhm.
destructive in relationships.
Mhm. Absolutely. What I invite people to do is when they have that emotional reaction, when they're noticing that, okay, I feel disgusted, I'm frustrated when my partner telling me this, or I discover that they're watching certain kind of porn, what's the story that shows up for me? Is it that like he or she is not interested in me, or I'm never gonna measure up to this, or they want this and I will not be able to deliver? Kind of like being very curious about that story. I'm kind of thinking about where is this story? Is this a useful story for me or not? Is it functional in my relationship or not? Because like so many times when I have couples in my practice, when I see, as you mentioned, a lot of couples that coming in because like one partner is watching porn and the other partner figured out, and they get really frustrated. And when we're talking about in this session, the partner says, the male partner often says that this is like not what I want. It's like different. Like my own sexuality is different than what I want with you. And it doesn't devalue our relationship, because one thing at times I see that many women, they know what sexy look like. We've seen it in the movie, but we don't know how it feels like. So I think
Right.
it's we're not confident in our own sexuality, that like in our brand of sexuality, that I'm valuable, I'm enough, and my sexuality is enough. And it's the same way, like if you're confident of your cooking and your partner eats at a restaurant, then there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the other piece of it is important to talk about your fidelity agreement. What's okay in the relationship and what's not okay, and be very clear about it and have open conversation about it. Because sometimes when people figure out their partner is like watching porn, they feel this sense of betrayal, that
Yes.
this is not what we agreed on, and you're kind of fulfilling your sexual desire someone else, and it's removing something, taking something away from me, which oftentimes that's not the case, but it could be in some couples.
Yes, and also like you said, more especially in long-term relationships, marriages,
Mhm.
we see sexless,
Mhm.
what is it, occasionally, and also we've seen also, I mean, from medical perspective, menopause plays a big role, more especially in women, and so in men. Men, they do experience the erectile dysfunction that comes with all aging. These
Mhm.
are inevitable changes, physiological changes. What can you advise a couple that is struggling with that? There's erectile dysfunction here, because I
Mhm.
mean, there's like, actually, when I posted this conversation, people said, "Oh, I would love to hear this because my man is so lazy."
Mhm.
Women say all these things, and you know what, it has layers. And there's also fear of, am I not attractive anymore? Why is he not
Mhm.
touching me? Can you talk about that? Because there's a
Mhm.
lot of things, and men also, they were not taught to be communicative about things like that.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think it's such a common concern I hear from couples that, we've been in this relationship for a while. The initial excitement of that dopamine rush subsided.
Yes.
And now we are in this good companionship, friendship we're having, but the sexual part, the sexual spark is missing. It's completely
Right.
understandable. And I think, as you said, it has multi layers. One layer is that if you've been doing the same routine over and over for like
Right.
10 years and 20 years, and you have not explored different things, whether it's kind of like if different behaviors or incorporating different things, so of course you would get bored. And I see a lot of sexual boredom, and at times it shows up as physiological responses. So I have women that they struggle with experiencing orgasm because they haven't been sexually aroused enough, or men that they have issues with maintaining erection and all of those challenges. So I think that that could be part of it. I think what you can do in a relationship, I think like one of the mistakes that people make is not dedicating enough time to foreplay. When we were
Yes.
younger, maybe like I don't know, younger than 20, you know, our
Yes.
hormones, surge of hormones, are kind of like we didn't care as much about foreplay. And again, the relationship often was newer, so people don't invest in foreplay. But what I see a lot in long-term couples that they can do better with investing in doing foreplay and kind of like doing things that they help them and their partner to feel psychologically aroused and physiologically aroused.
Yes.
Sometimes our partner require more touch for them to be ready for sexual encounters, or you guys can do all sorts of kind of like a psychological activity together, whether it's reading things, watching things, or talking about your fantasies, so your body is ready. Because sometimes when we are in different stages of life, it doesn't mean that we don't want sex, but our body changes. Sometimes I see with my clients that they used to have a spontaneous desire. Spontaneous desire
Yes.
is like you're doing other things in your life, and then the desire shows up. But in
Yes.
later stages of life, you transition perhaps to responsive desire, that you're feeling sexually neutral. But if you are in a sexual environment, then perhaps desire shows up afterward. And I think that requires some openness of, let us see
Yes.
what we can do to do for a kind of foreplay, to see what's going to happen next, and kind of exploring with different touch. And such a great point that you talk about. Sometimes people think their partner is lazy, but I think underneath that there could be a number of different things. Partly we're
Yes.
not communicating perhaps what we like because of the shame that this is what works for me, this is what I want. Or the other part of it is like our partner is not feeling confident. I like
Correct.
I see a lot of this with my couples that I work with, that when I meet with the male partner, heterosexual couple alone, they say like, you know, my partner wants this, but I have no idea how to do this, like, or how can I
Yes.
be good at it. Then it shows up at them like saying that, honey, I don't want to do it, when it comes from lack of skill.
Mm.
So I think it can be a number of different things.
Let's talk about the confidence part, because you said something beautiful on one of the podcasts that sometimes it has something to do with the body image, what you
Mm-hmm.
perceive of yourself. Like, are you comfortable being naked in front
Mm-hmm.
of your partner? I mean, we've seen people, I mean, I've had clients who tell me that I would never, dog, never in my life have sexual intercourse with my lights on. My husband
Mm-hmm.
knows me. I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean? So we do see these things. Let's talk about the situation we are in right now. There's COVID-19, people gained weight.
Mm-hmm.
What are you seeing right now in your practice? Because reality is, as people gain weight, like, let's talk about men specifically. Men gain weight, of course this affects their levels of testosterone and their drive. So going back
Mm-hmm.
to that laziness, people think people are lazy. People have gained a lot of weight, testosterone levels go down, your libido goes down. So what are you seeing right now? I was seeing, because people are spending more time with their families
Mm-hmm.
right now.
Absolutely. I think one thing that can be useful is to think about kind of carving out time for sex. And I'm going to say, how is
Right.
that related to what we're talking about? Because we want to be in the right mindset for having sex.
Yes.
If we're not feeling sexy, if we're not attending to our hygiene, to the clothing and all of that, then the desire might not show up as much. When people
Yes.
schedule sex, then you're kind of like thinking about it ahead of time, you're taking care of your body, and you're doing things like, you're preparing yourself for the act. I think that can be part of it. The other piece, I think it's important to, when you're scheduling things, and kind of thinking about what I feel the best. Some people feel the best during morning hours. Many men, they have
Yes.
like a higher testosterone in the morning, they feel better. Then that can help them to schedule it then. And perhaps
Right.
like if during the time that you feel better about your body, whether it's at nighttime, evening, or afternoon, that could be an option. But again, with the body piece, I think it's important to kind of, it's an ongoing work. that we need to do to
Yes.
our body. One thing I recommend my clients to do is like practice every day in front of the mirror, recognizing three things that you like about your body. And it could be just even the function that they're doing. So, going back to the wonderful point that you made earlier, what happens outside the bedroom impacts our confidence inside the bedroom. So, and I think sometimes if we're feeling generous, I highly encourage lovers to give really positive feedback to their partner. So if during the lovemaking you really enjoy this part of their body, say it, saying that I love how this looks. I love how it feels. So you can build each other confidence.
Yes, yes. And you know what? We see this a lot. People would say, my partner doesn't like a certain thing that I'm wearing. Now I don't feel like going out, making that extra effort and
Mhm.
buying all those lingeries. You know what? Let's talk about the piece of how do we raise our young girls without oversharing. Sometimes,
Mhm.
as you said, like sometimes it's our conditioning, how
Mhm.
the info, the template we got. So how do we do that? Because at the end of the day, there's still cultures where there's arranged marriage, and I've seen men coming to my practice secretly telling me that I am cheating on my wife because
Mhm.
she's plain. She doesn't want anything. She's very basic. She doesn't want anything, and it comes from a place of I am fasting. I'm not doing that. And
Mhm.
I am not going to do this. This is dirty. This, all that stuff. How do we condition our kids without damaging them?
Well, I think first of all, having compassion for ourselves, kind of thinking about that, as you mentioned, that we learned this from the previous generations, and
Yes.
generation after generation, they transfer this information, and I think it's important to have that understanding. But I love that you're thinking about what we can do right now. What we can
Yes.
do right now is to first invest on changing our relationship with our body and be mindful of what kind of thing we tell our children about our body, that like when if you're dieting, what are we talking about diets and food, and even respecting our body, because sometimes I hear parents coming into my practice and they have really kind of used really negative statements about their body in
Yes.
front of their young children, and our children are listening. I think that's really
Mhm.
important. Specifically around sex, I encourage people to talk about this thing early on, like what's when it's age appropriate. I'm talking about different body part pleasure, and when you're watching things in the kind of TV or cartoon, I think it's that those are a kind of great opportunity to pause and talk to your kid about it. What do you think about this? What was your reaction to this? So you can have this open communication around it. And I think it's the other piece of it is like, really, it's okay if you want to kind of say positive thing about our child's look, but also make sure that we're emphasizing other aspects of them, because many of my adult clients, they're sharing with me that now they're stuck in this kind of perfectionistic mindset, because
Yes.
that's what their
Yes.
parent praised them for, that you have a perfect body, you're always perfect. And now they carry that mentality in all aspects of life and in their relationship and their sexual life. And I think what's important when we are with another person, to be authentic and real and in the moment.
Yes.
So if we're stuck on that perfectionistic mindset, that can get in the way of us enjoying our sex life. I know it was a long-winded answer, but I think it has so many different parts.
It does, it does. And actually, talk of infidelity. I've seen women also coming to me saying, Doc, I have this anxiety. When I saw my partner's partner, I'm obsessing about looking like her. I'm
Mm-hmm.
stressed about how I look. I think he wants slim girls. And
Mm-hmm.
now people start going into even eating disorder. We see this,
Mm-hmm.
people they purge and do all these things because they're struggling to accept themselves. So I really liked when you touched that, the accepting ourselves and also having a healthy relationship with food, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, Dr. Naz, there's something interesting about also looking at how also we look at workplaces. We see people struggling with infidelity because there's issues at work, I mean, at home.
Mm-hmm.
How do people really shield their relationships? Because I mean, you cannot, there's women and even men who tell me that I struggle with my spouse when he's not, or when she's not here at 5.
Mm-hmm.
How do people work on that? Because we're going to
Mm-hmm.
work with other people that will also probably trigger us. And
Mm-hmm.
also the issue is there's also that dynamic of you could have a chemistry with someone who are you're not even going to have any sexual intercourse. It's just the human nature of how
Mm-hmm.
we are designed.
Absolutely. I think when we talk about infidelity, it's important to keep in mind there's so many different reasons people act on those desires, right? Sometimes people kind of like, even I see that people, they don't like the person they become. That's why they seek out relationship outside, and it has nothing to do with the partner. So it could have something to do with the relationship. It could be something about the person goes outside the relationship, their level of impulsiveness, a number of different things. But if you feel like insecure in the relationship, I think the good place is to define what, again, what you consider cheating and what's not cheating, and communicate that with the partner. And the other piece of it, kind of thinking and accepting that, as you mentioned, as human being, we are sexual being. I think if you're
Yes.
healthy, if you're in a good mental place, you will notice attractive people and you might feel
Of course.
attraction. It has nothing to do with how much you want your partner, or it has doesn't have doesn't necessarily lead most of the time to an affair. But I think one thing that I recommend people to do is have this relationship check in with the partner. How are things
Yes.
going on with us relationally, as a parent, as a lover, as a friend? And I'm talking about how can we do better. So if you have these ongoing problems and kind of check-ins, and we're identifying the problems, it helps us to identify when there are issues and address them. So that can help us to feel more confident in our relationship.
I love that communication piece, Dr. Nas, because it's big in relationships. And usually people believe that, okay, if we're not communicating well, how does he or she think that we're going to be okay in bed? So that's really powerful. And you know what? Thank you so much to the viewers. They still here. And I would like us, as we wrap, Dr. Nas, what advice would you give to people that are reaching that midlife? Because the reality is, in your clinical psychology, reality is we're starting to see great divorce. Men now, actually, I was looking at the American studies there. There's more divorce now in the 50s going up. People, men, they feel vital right now and their spouses are not. So they're going for younger women. So, what advice can you give? Aging is part of life,
Mhm.
but how do we remain vital in our relationships? Because it's a reality. Now we're starting to see, yes, men are going for younger women.
Well, I think it's important to work on our mindset. One of the misconception that hear from many of the couples that I see that are in the later stages of life, that
Yes.
they assume that if you're older or you're post menopause, then you're not sexual. They think like sexuality has a expiration date. And
Yes.
I see that many people in 60s, 70s, and even 80s, they have connecting, satisfying sexual life. If there is an issue, then perhaps that could be a health issue. So if you have a health issues, it's important to attend to it. If you're struggling with mental health issues like depression, anxiety, all of those things, then that's an issue that needs to be addressed. But just because you're older doesn't mean that you will not have, you don't deserve to have a good sex life. It's just a matter of optimizing different aspects of your life and scheduling kind of like the energizing experiences so you will be sexually alive. And if you've never been as a sexual person when you were younger, you haven't been a sexual person when you were younger, it's never too late. I had clients that they actually post-menopause, they have a more sexual confidence because they feel like they don't need to worry about getting pregnant.
Lovely. Yes. You know, talk of actually timing and also arranging that. I see this all, and also advise actually to young mothers. They just had a child and
Mhm.
also their partners, because this is the time also we see that infidelity rising up because the partners feel neglected, because moms are busy with their babies, you know. So I
Mhm.
love that piece that we need to make time. We need to arrange, we need to have a schedule for this because it's hard work. Can
Mhm.
you comment on the part where people think if they have sex once a week is less,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
something that, oh, you don't get it once a, you get it once a week, I get it 7 times, or maybe once a
Mhm.
month. What is the best sex every month? So if we
Mhm.
can use that.
Such a common question that I hear, that like people
Yes.
often say like how often a couple need to have sex, and I say like as whatever frequency it feels comfortable for them, because I think in different stages of life we have different desires and our what feels like other priority, like we have, like as you mentioned, that maybe we have a young child or maybe things are happening in our life. So I think it's important to have an honest conversation that how frequently I desire sex, how much I want to have sex, and have that conversation with your partner. And come talk to them.
Yes.
Okay, how much do you want to have sex? And don't be scared of if there are number differences. I often see that one partner at some stages of life, they want more sex, and the other partner wants less sex. And like, talk about, negotiate what feels good. Then is it okay for them to masturbate? Is it, are you open to do other activities that doesn't require intercourse? So having a conversation about these things can help couples to get closer and close the desire gap more effectively.
I love it. Just to add to that piece, I've seen also dads, new dads or dads to be scared of any interactions when their woman is pregnant. And there's absolutely nothing wrong because pregnancy is a physiological change, not unless it's indicated that there's some danger like placenta previa, your placenta is below. We don't want that woman to bleed. But for men watching us, pregnancy has no interaction. There's no drug interaction as we would put with drugs with having sexual intercourse. Actually, as a matter of fact, towards the end of pregnancy, semen is very good. It has prostaglandins that help that cervix to mature, to get that baby out. Oh my gosh, I'm enjoying it, Dr. Naz. As we wrap up, I know that you have such an amazing profile, that you do so much on social media. Can you share here, how can they find you?
Oh, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for having me on your show. So people can find me on Instagram. My handle is Sexology Podcast, and they can check out my podcast on sexologypodcast.com.
I know it's lovely. And you know what, to our viewers, you probably want to check her whole work. I posted here right on the screen. You guys check it out. I've learned so much from Dr. Naz, and also the perceptions. I mean, we are all conditioned. Like you said, you come from Iran. I'm from South Africa. My mother never really did any formal education, but I'm grateful for that because she did not also give me that template to see sex as something that's evil. So it's quite interesting that when we come from different cultures and also the different the beliefs, some people, they come from a very strong Christian background, which sometimes at the later stage it interferes with how they relate with their spouse. And also, like you said, there's that perception that, am I a bad girl if I'm asking what I deserve? And of course, the perception of what is cheating, what is infidelity, because sometimes people get really offended. To our viewers here, I'm so grateful you are back here, and of course I'll be back again next week. I'm so happy you stayed with us till the end. Dr. Naz is amazing. Like she said, she's quite active on social media. Check her out on Instagram. She's fantastic. Check her out. You know what? I was pleased to listen to your podcast and how you also gave that piece of looking at the dynamism that occurs in relationships, and also looking at also the post-menopause people, because we tend to forget that age group, and also men who are going through changes in their life, and also that vitality that is lost. So thank you so much for the work you do. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, viewers here. Thank you so much for coming. We'll see you again next week, next time, and same time. Thanks. Take care.